Right, this is going to be the quickest way of doing this. No editing at all. No processing twice. So I'm back at work now, so I don't have the time to put all the fancy pictures on. So let's just get on with it. Now, this will be called #7, number 7, even though it's chapter 6, because the first one was all of the, preface and introduction. So this is chapter 6, but it'll be called number 7. So, Jinn, nature, abilities and powers. The Quran says God granted Jinn abilities and powers he didn't give humans. Indeed, some Jinn run amok in the world with those powers, creating disharmony and damage in their various guises, sometimes for fun and sometimes for malice. The Jinn are made of smokeless fire, and they certainly act like fire, igniting suddenly, behaving erratically, and destroying whatever lies in their path. Humans believe they have ways of containing Jinn, much like they tried to contain fire itself. But Jinn, like raging blazes, have ways of jumping the barriers to burn somewhere else. There is another tricky element to the fiery nature of Jinn. They are not only the blaze itself, they are the arsonist who starts the fire, who laughs while things burn. Jinn as tricksters. This trickster is an archetypal figure found in all mythologies, but is especially prominent in Native American lore. Tricksters operate outside the laws and boundaries of order. Although both a creator and a destroyer, the trickster spirit is best known for its destructive tendencies, pranks, jokes, and malicious cruel acts. Trickster has no morals or values and follows only his desires and impulses. While not inherently evil, Trickster doesn't distinguish between good and evil, for both are means to an end. He has no sexual boundaries and is even of unclear gender himself at times. He will tell lies if they suit his purpose and follow one lie with another lie that conflicts with the first, such that anyone who listens to him becomes utterly confused and disorientated. Trickster also loves to shapeshift, and his animal nature is expressed in his favourite forms, such as a coyote, snake, raven, spider, or hare. Trickster plays the fool, but in the end makes fools of others. Trickster especially enjoys laughing at the expense of the victims he dupes. Though he is sometimes duped himself, he often has the last laugh of chaos and disorder. Some well-known examples of trickster figures are Hermes, the Greek messenger god and god of deceit and thieves, as well as all arts and scientists. Loki, the sly gender-changing, shape-shifting troublemaker of Norse mythology, and Coyote, the vulgar, fire-stealing braggart found in several Native American traditions. A strong trickster element runs through the Jinn and even permeates attempts of humans to define, describe, predict, control, and best the Jinn. Although the Jinn are explicitly acknowledged in the Quran, Islamic scholars throughout the centuries have debated their reality. The great Ibn Sina, known to the Romans as Avicenna, a physician and philosopher, was among those who said there was no reality to the Jinn. Later philosophers, such as Ibn Khaldun, acknowledged the Jinn and said Allah reserved all of the knowledge about them for himself. The Jinn are briefly discussed in Phil's book Interdimensional Universe. Shortly after the book was published, he received several letters from people of the Islamic faith from around the world. They found the descriptions and encounters he had with the Jinn to be accurate, and they offered him congratulations and praise for having the courage to write about a topic that has been largely ignored by the West. These people also stated in their letters that what was covered in the book confirmed their faith in the Quran, as it proved to them that the Jinn are very much alive and active in the modern world. Recent trends in Islam recognise the undeniable reality of Jinn, but beliefs about their nature, characteristics, abilities, powers and lives are, like all forms of supernatural traditions and law, open to a great deal of interpretation. Modern beliefs blend religion with pre-Islamic folktales. Some make distinctions between jinn and devils, who are the evil offspring of Iblis. Some believe in good jinn and bad jinn, while others consider all jinn to be dangerous. Below we discuss traits, abilities and powers generally attributed to jinn. They have limits to their powers. Despite the formidable range of jinn abilities and powers, they have limits. Jinn can only operate so much outside of cosmic law and order, for ultimately they are bound by the Quranic word of God, as are humans and angels. God gave both humans and jinn power to influence the heavens and earth, but only within the bounds he allows. Those of either race who transgress the limits will be destroyed. O company of jinn and men, if you have power to penetrate all religions of the heavens and the earth, then penetrate them. You will never penetrate them save with our sanction. Which is it? Of the favours of your Lord do you deny? There will be sent against you both heat of fire and flash of brass, and you will not escape. Muhammad stated that whoever intentionally ascribes something to me falsely, he will surely take his place in the hellfire. If jinn do not accept their limits voluntarily, then they can be forced to do so, not only by God's wrath, but by taking refuge in the Quran through prayer and recitation. For example, jinn cannot open doors closed by Quranic prayer, nor can they pollute or eat food similarly protected. Even so, the jinn still have considerable latitude for destruction in the mortal world, and they use their trickster wiles to circumvent prohibitions against them. Apparently, some of them have little concern about answering for their transgressions on the day of judgment, and are instead governed by their whims and immediate desires. People who tend to live hedonistic lives, in addition to those who are inclined to be sinful, make easy targets for jinn, but they especially love the challenge of thwarting the faithful. The Quran assures that Satan, Iblis, and by extension the evil jinn followers, have no dominion over the pious. However, sometimes the pious are the most sorely afflicted by jinn. A biblical parallel of such trickster treatment is Job's trials at Satan's hands, who asked God for permission to attack him in order to test his faith. Job was the most pious and righteous of men, a perfect target. The faithful may argue that God must allow the attacks of evil, an argument made through the ages, as attempts to explain why bad things happen to good people. Permission or not, evil has sneaky ways of infiltrating good through its cracks. When Iblis defied God, he vowed he would lead Adam and his kind to perdition. They are untrustworthy and vindictive. Before people were created, the jinn reigned supreme, building great cities and enjoying God's favour. Egyptian lore tells of this more peaceful time, ruled by a succession of either 40 or 72 kings, all named Solomon, the last of whom was Gan ibn Gan. The jinn under this last king were said to have built the Great Pyramids of Egypt, a belief still held by some of the turn of the 20th century. The status, nature and fate of the jinn changed drastically when God created Adam and ordered both angels and jinn to kneel. The defiant jinn were forced to give up their place and were consumed by resentment and revenge. They became bent on using deceit, evil, and any means possible to strike back at the source of their misfortune, us. By the time the biblical King Solomon had subjected them, they had already made up their minds. Like trickster, the jinn are untrustworthy and unpredictable because they make no distinction between good and evil. While technically more amoral than they are truly evil, they can be quite nefarious and deadly at times, as whatever means are at hand justify their ends of revenge. Tricksters lack concern for the welfare of people. If people are harmed, or if they die as a result of a trickster's actions, it's just too bad for them. Similarly, the jinn have little regard for our welfare. For sport, they sometimes perch upon rooftops and hurl bricks down on people, wounding and even killing them. Jinn are vindictive and will never forgive the person who tries to harm them deliberately. For example, if people try to get rid of a jinni attached to or possessing them, the jinni will take offence. It may leave temporarily, but return with greater force and increased malice. They are masters of deceit and illusion. Jinn can never be trusted to tell the truth, no matter how sincere and convincing they are. If they don't know the answer to a question, they make one up on the spot, with no regard to consequences. They make false promises and abandon people. One story tells of a war in which believers engaged in battle against a band of infidels. Iblis promised to protect the believers and said they would be unconquerable, but when the enemy armies came into view, he fled. Another story is told about a pious man who was entrusted with the care of a virgin girl while her 3 brothers went off to war. Iblis gradually persuaded him to seduce her, and she gave birth to a son. Horrified at what the brothers would probably do to him upon their return, the man followed the guidance of Iblis and murdered both girl and infant, burying them in a ditch. When the brothers returned, the man made a great show of sorrow over their unfortunate deaths. Iblis then appeared to the brothers in dreams, taking the form of a traveller, and told them what the man had actually done and where the bodies were buried. They discovered the corpses and confronted the man, who confessed. The brothers decided to punish him by crucifixion. As the man suffered on the cross, Iblis appeared to him and promised to save him if he would deny Allah. The man did, and Iblis vanished, leaving him to face excruciating death and divine wrath. One can hear Iblis's trickster laughter trailing after him as he disappeared into his parallel dimension. Even the jinn who have converted to Islam cannot be trusted, or they may claim they have converted when they have not, in order to gain a person's trust. Sheikhs, a term that applies to both religious authorities and tribal leaders, magicians and others who dominate and control jinn for the purposes of magic, fortune-telling and healing, are, in the eyes of many, vulnerable to the illusions and lies of the jinn. The Quran states that jinn cannot perform miracles, a gift possessed only by the true messengers of Allah. Rather, jinn can only execute the illusion of miracles. Thus they tell lies and perform tricks to give the appearance of magic and miracles, fooling both practitioner and client. They possess invisibility and superior speed and strength. As residents of a parallel realm, jinn are invisible to us unless they choose to appear, giving them a great advantage over us humans. They love to lurk and spy on people, especially in bathrooms, garbage dumps and dirty, polluted places, but also in homes and intimate places such as bedrooms. They watch and wait for opportunities to strike. Their invisibility creates many problems for people who may injure or even kill a jinni without realising it. The people of the ancient Arabic world believed that you should never cast a stone or even a date pit out into the open, for you may strike an invisible jinni. Never throw water, especially boiling water, out of a window, for the same reason. Driving a stake into the ground may hit a jinni in his subterranean home. Jinn who receive injury rally their clans, who react like a swarm of angry hornets. Together they rain all manners of disaster, illness and bad luck, nightmares and even possession down on the offending person and his family. Their natural form, smokeless fire or plasma, and supernatural power enable jinn to move with tremendous speed. In the story of Aladdin in the Book of 1001 Nights, a jinni builds a hero an entire palace in one night. In Egyptian law, a jinni can travel the distance from Cairo up the Nile to Aswan, 982 kilometres, or about 610 miles, in 1 second. Thus, when they choose to be visible, they can be seen in one spot 1 second, and then vanish and be seen in a distant place almost instantly. The jinn have superhuman strength and can use their powers to lift and levitate objects of great size and weight, such as the gigantic pieces of marble transported for the building of Solomon's temple. Any person thinking he can best a jinni in a physical confrontation is making a fatal mistake. At the least, he will be severely beaten. At the worst, he will be killed in an instant. They influence thoughts and dreams. Jinn influence a person's thoughts and dreams by whispering temptations and suggestions in their ear. A jinni could be considered the evil force sitting on a person's shoulder to counter the good influences of the angel on the other. The ability to hear jinn whispering occurs between the ages of 12 and 14. Prior to that, children are protected from a jinni's influence by angels. Besides whispering, jinn create disturbances such as whistling and strange noises which distract people at crucial moments. They confuse people by speaking in their own language, Syrian, which sounds like a combination of Greek and Latin, or German and Italian. Certain sheikhs are able to understand it. Jinn can enter people's dreams and can influence their thoughts and actions for the worst. They can prey upon desires and weaknesses and give false counsel. They can appear as figures claiming to be messengers of God, but, as we have noted above, they cannot masquerade as Muhammad himself. Jinn, who fall in love with humans, come to them in their dreams and whisper in their ears, inciting them to fight with their spouses. They cause nightmares. Jinn can appear in dreams in animal guises, especially as camels, the symbol of the evil jinn. Jinn will also appear in dreams for the illusion of fortune-telling. One method of consulting them calls for taking a piece of someone's clothing, preferably unwashed underwear, and placing it beneath one's pillow, asking for information about the person. The jinn respond with the desired information, delivering it in the dream. Trusting the information is risky, given the jinn's propensity for lying and deceit. They cast the evil eye. One of the most dreaded of evils since ancient times is the evil eye, a withering look that causes illness, misfortune, calamity, and death. Belief in the evil eye is universal. The oldest recorded reference to it dates to about 3000 BCE in the cuneiform texts of the Sumerians, Babylonians, and Assyrians. The ancient Egyptians believed in it, and it is referred to in both Old and New Testaments. Evil eye beliefs are especially strong in the Mediterranean and Middle East. The evil eye is powered by envy, a force considered in parts of the Middle East to be the root of all evil. In many cases, the evil eye is cast involuntarily, such as when someone, especially a stranger, admires one's family, business, or possessions, casts anyone a withering glance, or praises anything belonging to another person. Unless immediate preventative measures are taken, such as ritual gestures and prayers or invoking Allah's name, disaster will strike. Children will fall ill, possessions will be stolen, or good fortune in business will soon turn sour. If the evil eye cannot be warded off, victims must turn to sheikhs for help. The evil eye can also be deliberate, like in a black magic spell. Jinn can influence a person to cast the evil eye, and if shape-shifted into human form, the jinn can cast the evil eye themselves. That's my alarm clock. Modesty and avoiding displays of good fortune and wealth are ways to avoid the evil eye, either from other people or jinn. However, jinn know the secrets of people's wealth, their vanities, and their ambitions. All these things serve as ammunition for a weapon such as the evil eye. They are capable of possession. The jinn can stage a complete takeover of a person by dominating their thoughts and dreams, as described earlier, and by entering the body. Their indefinable form enables them to easily penetrate a body and circulate through the blood. They cause all manner of physical discomforts and illness, in addition to paralysis, fits, and convulsions. They also cause aberrant and bizarre behaviour, such as tearing one's clothes off, laughing hysterically, or dancing wildly in the street. They come onto the tongue of a person and speak through them. They cause extreme, even suicidal depression and insanity. They can incite a person to crime and murder. In severe cases, jinn take up permanent residence in a body and must be forcibly expelled through exorcism by a skilled sheikh. Jinn who fall in love with people may enter a person's body in order to be closer to their love. This is not a desirable condition for the person, but in such cases, the jinni will usually not harm the person unless he or she does something to upset or anger them. If an evil jinni takes up physical residence, the danger is much greater. The jinni's intention is maximum damage, even death. Not all forms of jinn possession are this extreme, however. Some cases involve being touched by a jinni, that is, the jinni comes and goes as it wishes and causes mild, temporary possessions. A person may have episodes of unusual behaviour and not remember them after the jinni departs. In some milder possessions, efforts are made to reconcile with the jinni rather than expel it. The jinni is enraged in dialogue, speaking through its victim. It explains its grievances and what it wants in order to stop its possession. Some of the exorcism rituals are known as zar. Victims are usually women who are having problems with their husbands. As a result, they become possessed by jinn. The jinn who love worldly pleasures demand appeasement through jewellery and other gifts, sweets and favours that must be performed by the offending husbands. Possession is considered a substantial risk of crossing a jinni or inadvertently injuring one. Sudden emotional and physical shocks rip open a person's natural protection and enable a jinni to breach the mind and body. Exorcisms are not always successful. Jinn often sneak back into the body. They magically grant wishes. In folk tales, jinn who are imprisoned in vessels and rings must grant 3 wishes to whomever liberates them, after which they are free. Unfortunately, stories about wish fulfillment are seldom straightforward. Usually the wishes backfire, working too well or not at all how the wisher had hoped. As the jinn themselves warn, every wish has a consequence. In most tales, the first wish is unsuccessfully successful, but the next 2 are not, and the protagonist finds himself in increasing trouble because of the wishes. The wishes must be worded very carefully, for a jinni will find a way to follow them to the letter, but in unexpected ways. Even if he tries to be clever, the protagonist never outwits a jinni, and usually the person's final wish is to undo the first 2. This theme continues to be played out in modern tales of the genie. Earlier we mentioned the story The Thief of Baghdad, about a boy who finds a genie's bottle on a beach. In the film Wishmaster, 1997, the protagonist liberates a particularly evil genie. For one wish he asks for $1 million and receives it in an insurance payout when his aunt dies in a plane crash the genie had caused. In The Man in the Bottle, an episode of The Twilight Zone, 1960, a down-on-their-luck pawnbroker and his wife are offered an untraditional 4 wishes by a jinni who comes out of a wine bottle. Dubious, they ask him to repair a broken glass cabinet. When the jinni does this instantly, they get excited and ask for $1 million. He complies. They give away a lot of the money, and then the taxman comes to claim all but $5. For a third wish, the husband asks to be the leader of a powerful, modernised country in which he cannot be voted out of office. Suddenly, he becomes Adolf Hitler, about to commit suicide in his bunker at the end of World War II. In a panic, the man uses his 4th wish to erase everything that had happened. Everything is back to normal. When he gets home, he finds the wine bottle that contained the jinni is broken. His repaired glass cabinet breaks. Everything is as it was before he wishes. He tosses a wine bottle into a trash can on the street. The jinni smoke reforms the bottle anew, and it lies in wait for someone else to release it. They can shapeshift into any form. Shape-shifting is one of the most important abilities of jinn. We have saved it for last so it can be fully discussed and reinterpreted. We believe that some cases of paranormal activity may actually have had shape-shifting jinn behind them. Artful shape-shifting is a primary trickster trait. Magical transformations are a great asset in confounding humans, who never know quite what they're dealing with. As a result, people can land in great trouble before they realise it. One must take care not to throw water or stones at dogs and cats, especially black ones, for they are likely to be jinn in disguise. Once doused or lit, they and their clans become angry and will strike back in revenge. Similar precautions apply to snakes, another favoured form. Jinn also like to mimic the shapes of birds and goats. Jinn can take the form of mice to enter homes at night. If the residents have been foolish or absent-minded enough to leave lamps or candles lit, the jinn mice overturn them, resulting in the home being consumed by fire, an excellent example of their fiery trickster nature. Jinn also shapeshift into human form, especially to fool people for the purposes of misleading and persuasion. The one form they cannot take is that of the Prophet Muhammad himself. Muhammad makes appearances in visions and dreams for the purpose of guidance. He assured his followers, "Whoever sees me in a dream, he surely sees me. for Satan cannot impersonate me, appear in my figure. However, nothing prevents a jinni from taking on the human form of a sheikh or an admired authority figure, whom people will mistake as a representative of the Prophet. It probably occurred to jinn long ago that they could take on the forms of supernatural entities, at least some of whom are real beings in their own right, using them as disguises for interacting with human beings. This masquerade shapeshifting of the jinn has been acknowledged in the Middle Eastern law. Author Umar Suleiman Al-Askar of the University of Jordan comments, "Many people of our time and the previous times have witnessed something of the jinn, even though many who had seen them or who had heard them were not aware that they were jinn. They thought that they were ghosts, spirits, invisible men, creatures from outer space, and so forth." Taking on supernatural entity forms appeals to the trickster in jinn, especially the green jinn, who like to amuse themselves at humanity's expense. The thought of a ghost wandering around a house or lingering on property frightens many people because of sudden appearances, strange noises, disembodied voices, odd smells, and phantom forms with grotesque features. Prevailing beliefs about ghosts hold that they are a type of recording, imprint, or memory left behind by a person who has died, or that they are the restless souls of those struck between the worlds of the living and the dead. Some ghosts seem to lack intelligence or awareness of the living, while others interact and attract attention. In either case, perhaps they are not remnants of people, but jinn having a bit of fun. Jinn activity may not account for all ghosts, of course, but perhaps they have created or piggybacked on the haunting phenomenon. Perhaps some of our most famous ghosts are not ghosts at all. It may be difficult, if not impossible, to ever know the difference. Another common haunting phenomenon is poltergeist activity, unexplained disappearances and reappearances of objects. Oh, well, that was sensible, wasn't it? Banging noises, mysterious rains of stones, lights flicking on and off by themselves, appliance malfunction and or breakage, property damage and disappearance, and other mayhem. Poltergeist is German for noisy spirit, and unexplained destructive activities are often blamed on demons, angry ghosts, other spirits, and black magic spells. Poltergeist activity also befits the trickster nature of the jinn as a way of creating chaos and disorder. Throughout history, people have reported encounters with mysterious creatures never before seen in the natural world. Sometimes only a few sightings are ever reported, but other times such creatures seem to exist in a parallel world, popping in and out of ours for reasons unknown. Werewolves, dogmen, Bigfoot, swamp monsters and Jersey Devil type flying creatures may be entities in their own right, but their forms could also be borrowed by trickster jinn. Masquerading as a supernatural creature may be for a jinn what donning a costume at Halloween is for humans. The object is to have some fun, perhaps at the expense of others. The famous Mothman wave of 1966-67 provides a good example of a possible jinn shape-shifting case. Mothman was a winged, red-eyed humanoid that suddenly began appearing in the area around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in particular an abandoned TNT plant. In November of 1966, Mothman was described as being 6 to 7 feet tall. It did not seem to have a head, and its eyes were set near tops of its shoulders. It shuffled on human-like legs, and it made strange high-pitched squeaking noise. It could take off straight up into the air without moving its wings, and flew as though gliding without flapping its wings. Mothman terrified witnesses. If they were in cars and sped off, it took off after them, keeping pace in a chase. It never aggressively attacked people. However, it would seem to tire of the chase and break off and vanish. Such behaviour is ascribed to green jinn, who sometimes like to toy with people but quickly grow bored and abruptly stop. Although Mothman received much attention due to its unusual appearance, the real activity in the wave was centred more around UFO extraterrestrial high strangeness. There were many sightings of mysterious lights, craft and aliens, electrical and telephone disturbances, poltergeist phenomena, phantom dogs and mysterious creatures, phantom people and sinister men in black. Dark, cadaverous, mechanical-like men who harass UFO contactees and threaten them to keep silent. A dog disappeared and wild animals were found mutilated. Mothman was blamed for all the phenomena, but was never caught in the act of doing anything but observing and chasing people. The famous paranormal investigator and author John A. Keel travelled to West Virginia to investigate the wave, documenting activity in his book, The Mothman Prophecies, 1975. Keel said at least 100 people had sightings of Mothman. The bizarre activity continued into 1967, declining towards the end of the year. On December the 15th, 1967, the 700-foot silver bridge that crossed the Ohio River at Point Pleasant collapsed, killing 46 people. Some people linked the bridge collapse to Mothman, though no direct evidence was ever found. The collapse of the bridge was accompanied by a halt in Mothman sightings, and Mothman soon disappeared from the area. Since then, sightings of the creature have continued sporadically in Point Pleasant and all over the world, but there have been no more waves comparable to the one in 1966-67. Keel believed Point Pleasant was a window or portal that temporarily opened to a parallel reality. We also believe in such portals, some of which may be open constantly, not just temporarily. It is possible that a portal did open at Point Pleasant, and many things poured through, including opportunistic jinn, all of the mystery beings, Mothman, men in black, phantom dogs, phantom people and aliens could have been jinn in disguise. The collapse of the Silver Bridge fits a trickster motif, a nonsensical but lethal end to wind up an intense paranormal activity. Sometimes jinn masquerades are more deadly in nature. Folklore and mythologies around the world are filled with supernatural predators of many shapes and names. Their main characteristics are luring unwary people to their doom and ambushing people as they travel, especially at night. In particular, fairy lore is full of such hostile beings, such as the water fairies who drown people, the wispy lights that lure travellers over cliffs and into bogs, and the savage trolls who jump out from beneath bridges. The jinn might make use of these and other nasty forms. In Egyptian lore, a murderous Nile River entity is known to be a jinnia, a female jinni, who takes the form of a beautiful woman with long blonde hair and the tail of a fish, much like a mermaid. She entices people to come to the edge of the river by creating illusions, trays full of glasses of tea floating on the water, balls floating on the water, or an old woman carrying a pot who asks for help. When people come close enough, she grabs them and pulls them under water. She gives them a choice: marry her or any one of her kind, or die. If the person refuses, she strangles him and drowns him. His corpse is found with the telltale thumb marks on his neck. Finally, an excellent example of what may have been a deadly jinn case comes from American supernatural history, the Bell Witch Cave. The Bell Witch haunting occurred in the 19th century in Adams, Tennessee, and involved spectral creatures, poltergeist activity, bedroom invasion, and death. It was blamed on a witch's curse, but has numerous hallmarks that can be interpreted as jinn in origin. We make those comparisons in the following analysis. Different versions of the story are told, but the main features are consistent. Sometime in the early 19th century, John Bell bought 1,000 acres of land near Adams and set up a prosperous farm. He and his wife Lucy had 8 children. In 1817, life went from good to miserable. The first signs of mysterious creatures Bell saw: a large black dog-like thing on his property that vanished when Bell fired at it with his shotgun, and a turkey-like bird, both are favoured jinn forms. After that, severe poltergeist outbreaks occurred in the house. Knocking, rapping and scraping sounds were heard in the home and outside on the doors and windows. Everyone in the family was upset by the sounds of invisible rats gnawing on things and invisible giant dogs clawing the doors. The disturbances went on for about a year and then escalated to attacks upon the family at night while they were asleep in their beds. Covers were pulled off, invisible hands slapped everyone on their faces and yanked their hair. The Bell's 12-year-old daughter, Betsy, got the worst of it. She was slapped, pinched, hit, bruised and stuck with pins. At first her parents thought she was playing tricks on them, but then became convinced that something sinister was afflicting the entire family. Word about the problem spread, and the Bell family became an object of curiosity. It was discovered that the invisible assailant was intelligent, for it responded to communication. When ordered to cease in the name of the Lord, it did, but only temporarily. It often resumed activity with greater intensity. This is a characteristic of jinn, who would temporarily stop their harassment only to resume it much more powerfully. After a time, the unknown spirit began to whistle and speak, as we saw above. The jinn are especially known for whistling and whispering. The entity gave different explanations of itself. It said it was a spirit from everywhere, heaven, hell and earth. I'm in the air, in the houses, any place, at any time. I've been created millions of years. That is all I will tell you. This description is striking fit with the jinn. The spirit also said it was the ghost of a person who was buried in the woods nearby and whose grave had been disturbed. Its tooth was beneath the Bell house. The Bells searched in vain for a tooth. A jinn would have laughed to see them on their wild goose chase. The spirit then said it was the ghost of an immigrant who died and left a hidden fortune and had returned to tell Betsy where it was stashed. It gave a location and the Bell boys dug for hours but found nothing. The spirit laughed aloud over that one. Jinn are known for promising riches and then not delivering. Meanwhile, the local residents were forming their own opinions about the spirit's identity. They decided it was a witch. The spirit said, I am nothing more or less than old Kate Bat's witch, and I'm determined to haunt and torment old Jack Bell as long as he lives. Kate Batts was a neighbour with whom Bell had previously had business dealings. She threatened to get even. There was no evidence that she ever suited actions to words, but from then on the spirit was called Kate. It was a suitable guise for a jinni. From a jinn perspective, bad business was indeed involved. As we have noted, jinn are extremely territorial and protective of their turf. Like the little man in the hole in chapter 5, they can become enraged if humans invade or damage their property. A jinni could have once occupied the land on which Bell established his farm. The Bell's arrival was nothing less than a home invasion, and the jinni reacted with characteristic anger. The spirit seemed to spin out of control. It visited other people beside the Bells, blasting them with insults. It made predictions, another hallmark of fortune-telling jinn, but most of all, it continued to torment John Bell and his family. A witch-layer, or professional exorcist, attempted to visit, but his carriage broke down. When he finally made it to the house, he attempted to kill the spirit with a silver bullet, but instead he was slapped around. Frightened, he left. Had he been knowledgeable about jinn, he would have brought iron weapons instead, for jinn, like fairies, are seriously weakened by iron. The spirit's final action was to make John Bell ill, certainly a favoured jinn tactic. John repeatedly felt ill with strange symptoms and lay in bed twitching and convulsing as though possessed. Kate claimed credit. Bell's health deteriorated. He was found dead in his bed on December the 9th, 1820, 3 years after trouble had first begun. A strange bottle of liquid, never before seen, was found in the medicine cabinet. Lucy fed it to their cat, which promptly convulsed and died. Kate claimed she poisoned Bell to death, and she laughed hysterically in triumph. The jinni had its revenge. However, the spirit was not done with the family. It turned full force on Betsy and tormented her over her engagement to a man, forcing her to break it off. Jinn who fall in love with humans are known to do the same. Betsy, however, married another man, but apparently someone the jinn spirit didn't mind. Kate announced she would leave but would return in 7 years. The cannonball-like object then rolled out of the chimney and burst into smoke, and the spirit vanished. Smoke and mists are associated with jinn, as they lack forms in their natural state. Since then, haunting phenomena have continued on the property, which is now privately owned and opened as a tourist attraction. The original Bell home no longer exists, but has been replaced with a replica. It is said to be haunted as well. The activity may spring from the land itself, which would be characteristic of a place frequented by jinn. Nearby is a small cave that extends about 500 feet into a bluff over a river. The cave is renowned for unusual phenomena, including apparitions, photographic anomalies of misty shapes, glowing balls of light, whispering voices, and sounds of breathing. Caves, as we have seen, are a favourite home of the jinn. A disturbed Native American burial site lies above the entrance to the cave. The bones of the woman buried there were stolen, which has given rise to belief in a curse. Bad luck will come to anyone who takes anything from the cave, even so much as a stone. Rosemary has visited the cave with Troy Taylor, founder of the American Ghost Society. Taylor has made numerous trips to the Bell Witch site and believes the cave to be a portal and the home of an ancient primeval spirit. It probably is, and it may belong to a djinn. In closing, the djinn are the artful dodgers of the paranormal, assuming different forms and slipping between dimensions at will. They have the ability to severely disrupt human life. In the following chapters, we compare djinn in more detail to other supernatural entities with whom we in the West are more familiar, and we examine ways to counter their effects.